everyone. I'm Pat Courtney Strong, and welcome to today's webinar. I provide marketing support to the Capital District Regional Planning Commission, which is an independent contractor to the New State Energy and Research Development Authority's Clean Energy Communities program for the upstate Eastern New York Territory. We are here today to provide an overview of municipal energy efficiency issues to help municipal leaders better understand their options. Before we begin, we have a few housekeeping items to go over with you. As you may have noted, we're keeping attendees on mute, but you can communicate with us through the chat feature of WebEx. If you're in through your computer, there's a toolbar that becomes visible at the top center of your screen when you put your cursor there. On the toolbar, you'll see the chat icon to the right. Communicate with us privately or publicly through it by using the drop-down menu for either. This is to submit questions to us for the speakers, which we will go to at the end of the webinar. And if you are connected via telephone only, you can email your questions to me at pat@courtneystrong.com. We'll do our best to get in as many questions as possible. As you know, things can happen during a webinar. If you get disconnected for any reason, just log back in or call back in. If you notice audio or visual issues on our end, feel free to use the chat box or email me to let us know what you're experiencing. For any reason you lose a computer connection, just dial in by phone with the number provided in your confirmation email. There's a questionnaire at the end of the webinar. It'll really help us if you'll take a moment to answer it. To answer the most popular question, though, that we usually receive, yes, we'll send you the slides in a follow-up email after the webinar by next week. We usually do it just after or a few days later. Now, begin our program by introducing today's speakers. We'll be starting with Robyn Reynolds, who will provide an overview of the Clean Energy Communities program. Robyn is a coordinator for the Capital Region under the Clean Energy Communities program, where she encourages local and regional adoption of energy efficiency and energy technologies and policy making. Malcarne, owner of Malcarne Contracting, will discuss energy conservation for municipalities. Joseph is a licensed professional engineer and holds LEED and BPI accreditations, as well as the Certified Energy Manager designation. Brignati will present on best practices in adopting the State Energy Code for municipal buildings. David is part of the team at Newport Ventures, training code officials, architects, and builders in New York on issues related to the current energy code, providing face-to-face training and curriculum development. David has more than 25 years of experience in the field of architecture and project management. We'll discuss EnergizeNY support for community-wide energy efficiency initiatives. Mark is the Executive Director of EnergizeNY and the Energy Improvement Corporation. Mark is also a member of the EnergizeNY panel for the town of Bedford, New York, and Bedford's representative to Sustainable Westchester. Okay. I'm going to unmute a few of our speakers here. I'm going to do Dave's work, I think. All right, hold on just a second. We're going to get to where we need to be. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to see some people on our webinar this morning, so thanks for joining us. I'm Robyn Reynolds. I'm a Clean Energy Coordinator here at the Capital District Regional Planning Commission. The Capital District Regional Planning Commission is helping to manage the Eastern Upstate Territory Clean Energy Communities program in alignment with our partners, the Adirondack North Country Association, the Hawk Valley Economic Development District, and the Hudson Valley Council. On the map on the screen here, this is our territory, but we're dialing in from another part of the state.
Robyn, hold on. Getting feedback that you need to move clear to the mic, so come on over here. Okay. Robyn is on phone, but we're going to put her next to me now. So, mind starting again?
Yes, we are helping to manage the Eastern Upstate Territory for the New York Clean Energy Communities Program. So all the map that you see on the screen here is the territory that we cover, alongside our partners, the Adirondack North Country Association, the Mohawk Valley Economic Development District, and Hudson Valley Regional Council. So if you're dialing in from an area that you don't see on the screen, fear, there are other folks in other parts of the state who are experts and who also are helping communities move forward with the program in other areas of the state. So feel free to visit the NYSERDA Clean Energy Communities website to figure out who you should be talking to in your respective area. So if you haven't already heard about the Clean Energy Communities program, it's an open enrollment program that provides rewards and recognition for communities that demonstrate leadership. This first step is to become a designated clean energy community by implementing 4 out of 10 high-impact actions. And then once your community has completed those 4 actions, then they're eligible to receive up to $250,000 worth of funding. So it's just a 2-step process, and there's plenty of help and resources to get you to the finish line. Next slide. So this is really a program for all communities. There is funding allocated by population size, as you can see on the screen, at the bottom of the screen in that table. The high impact actions within the program represent best practices around the state. So the actions are kind of great to implement as standalone actions, but if you complete 4 of them, there's the added carrot that you can receive some funding at the end of the tunnel. Each region has funded for 18 projects, although since we're almost a year into the program, there's different funding that still exists in different parts of the state. So again, I encourage you to visit the NYSERDA Clean Energy Communities Program website to check out what awards are still available in your respective region. The funding is first come, first served. Technical assistance available to help not only be able to understand how to implement those actions, but also to understand, what funding can go towards, so what types of projects are eligible for funding. One of the great benefits of the program is that there is no local cost share, and there is up to 25% advance available once the project commences. So there's a nice little additional pot of money that your community will be able to access as soon as the project starts. So the tensions are on the screen right now. Also prominent in a lot of literature on the program. So I won't spend any time kind of talking about each action item specifically, because today we are going to be covering the clean energy upgrades action. So again, these are the 10 high impact actions. And if your community can achieve 4 of these, then they'll be eligible for the funding. And today we're going to be talking about clean energy upgrades specifically and what that means. The benchmarking action is important to know here because a great first step in order to understand your community's energy needs in terms of municipal buildings is to complete the benchmarking action. That would require your community to track energy usage using the Energy Star Portfolio Manager platform for your municipal buildings. So it's a fairly simple and easy process, and your coordinators are on hand to help you understand how to implement this action and how to gather the data necessary to enter into the Energy Star Portfolio Manager platform. It's a great way to kind of monitor and manage your building energy usage. It's important that you take this as a first step before approaching the clean energy upgrades. And upgrades action, which we'll be talking about more how to implement that today, would require a municipality to achieve a 10% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from municipal buildings through energy efficiency upgrades and renewable energy implementation. So upgrades that are available for this action would be solar, wind, geothermal, wood pellets, anaerobic digester gas, or other renewable energies. So this also would include energy efficiency improvements, which we'll be talking about in the presentation today. So any of those are technologies that would be eligible to be counted toward this action. The upgrades must have been substantially completed after January 1st, 2014 in order for this to count credit. There's specific documentation that would need to be submitted in order for your community to be credited for this action being completed. Which includes a benchmarking report, some engineering or other types of documentation that prove that energy improvement has achieved that 10% emission reduction, and then a clean energy calculator that is available on the NYSERDA website. So they're all the documentation that would need to be submitted, but your coordinators are ready to help you compile that documentation to make sure that your community gets credit where credit is due. So available resources to help implement this action. The New York Power Authority has a program to help municipalities finance these energy improvements, and I see we do have folks on the line from the New York Power Authority, so feel free to reach out to us so you can connect to them, or we can have that conversation to see if that's a good fit for you. Energy performance contracts often provide municipalities a way to finance these improvements with low or no upfront costs, and this is another way for your community to be able to implement these actions without adding anything to the budget. So it's a nice way to kind of move forward with these improvements if it's a good fit for you, and we can help you explore that option. And then different utilities offer incentives that might be available for your community to do things like LED lighting upgrades, in some cases more substantial upgrades like heating, ventilation, air conditioning upgrades. So feel free to reach out to us to understand what options are available from your utilities. There's, of course, as I mentioned, the technical assistance that's available from us, the Clean Energy Community Coordinators, to help you understand what your options are and then how to move forward. Toolkits for each of the high-impact actions mentioned today on NYSERDA's website. There's also some additional funding and financing options for the different high-impact actions, and we just reviewed some of those options for clean energy upgrades, but there's certainly others out there. What kinds of projects can be funded through the Clean Energy Communities Program. There's a lot of text on this slide, so I apologize for that, but this is the evaluation criteria. So this, there's a highlight on the approach, whether or not you're proposing a project that has a feasible time frame. So once you achieve that designation and have that money to think about spending, you need to make sure their project has a feasible approach. There's obviously an emphasis on the greenhouse gas and energy reduction. There's an emphasis on collaborating with other municipalities. The project should think about how to be innovative and replicable, and also if the project has public and private dollars going into it, or generates other economic development impacts, that is also one evaluation criteria. If you want on the program, as I mentioned, there's a multitude of different resources available on the NYSERDA Clean Energy Communities Program website. It's there that you can access the toolkits. You can check to see how much money is available in your region. You can check out the interactive map that shows you which communities have implemented what actions, so you can see what others in the field are doing. Maybe we as coordinators can help connect you to other communities who have done things that are of interest to you, so you can learn they did it. So there's a lot of great resources on the website. I certainly encourage you to go check it out. Also, some more substantial guidance documents available at that other link. So feel free to check out the guidance document. We here can help you learn more about the program rules and requirements, but that's where you would access the opportunity notes and other guidance documents over at that link. And then feel free to connect to me, the Capital Region Clean Energy Coordinator, or the Program Manager, Todd Fabosi, to learn more about the program in a more general sense, or to get more one-on-one technical assistance. We're always happy to hear from you. And I think the next slide is just my contact information. So thanks, everyone, for hearing a brief overview of the program. And now I'll turn it over to the experts to talk more about clean energy upgrades.
Terrific. And what we didn't say about herself is that she does a wonderful job of keeping all the clean energy community coordinators apprised of what's going on with the municipalities that we are serving. And it's been constant barrage of news, hasn't it been?
Absolutely.
With communities joining every day and gaining designations. There's so much good news.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, do you mind if we play musical chairs, since we never did figure out your webcam, David?
No.
We know this one's working. So good morning, David.
Good morning. Robyn, thank you for that. That was a great introduction to the program. I'm going to talk to you about the essentially where to start with a municipality or anybody who wants to, where to go with energy efficiency and conservation. In my mind is at the energy code. This is the base level of what all new buildings, all new construction is supposed to meet. So it's a great way to get an understanding of what is regulated by the energy code and how conservation, lower consumption, lower emissions, and increased savings can occur. And that's exactly what the code is all about, and making those changes. And both for buildings as well as new construction. And as you see with the statistics on the slide, there's a lot of energy that could be saved, and a lot of money could be saved as well with very reduced emissions. So why the energy code? Why was it adopted, other than the fact that all 50 governors across the United States signed on to set 2009 energy code as for the country? It's about money. It's about savings. So here in the state, the energy bill is somewhere around $500 million. And as you can see in the pie chart there, that the energy use about 60% of that money. So look back more the nationals. As you see, in 2015, there was about 5.6 million commercial buildings in the United States, representing somewhere around 90 billion square feet of commercial floor space. And on this pie chart, you set lighting, space heating, cool ventilation, again, are the majority of what that pie represents. And all the items are rated by the energy code. So what the lowest hanging fruit that's available out there, you take a look at the code and you see that lighting controls and electrical power are something that's regulated by that. And with lighting controls, with the LEDs that are coming into play now, those controls are going to get more and more efficient and save more and more money. So again, with renovation, just putting in controls, turning off the lights when people aren't in the room, things like that, it will help create savings and reductions by not having things on when people aren't there. In the code, you'll see that you know, in spaces they have things that some that require occupancy controls, which is a sensor that, you know, notices when people are in a room. There's also vacancy controls when people aren't in a room, and the lights turn on and off based on use instead of just being left on all the time. If they don't have the requirement for an occupancy sensor or don't want to use that, you could put the on-time switches where it sets schedules for everything and makes things a whole lot more efficient as well, as opposed to just having standard and off switches. And then also, respect lighting, not only are controls something that we can do, but the efficacy of the lighting, the amount of electricity that goes in to create the amount of light that gets output, it's called lighting efficacy. And higher efficiency, the higher efficacy that you have for the lighting, the better you're going to do, so you get more light with less energy. And CFLs, linear fluorescence, those have been around for quite a while. The LEDs are coming into play, as you can see on the screen. Those are actually LED lights that are recessed into the chipboard, and I believe that's actually the lighting for the room. So it's a very interesting way to light the space as well as be extremely energy efficient. So again, these are low-hanging fruit that can occur any structure, be it new or in buildings. Then another thing that could be done, as we think back to the pie chart that I just mentioned, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. Putting in efficient equipment, do load calculations, making sure the sizing of the equipment is proper so that the equipment runs on a correct schedule and is also maintained. And then, of course, same thing as with lighting. There's controls that go on in there that can help with be energy efficient when the controls requirements are followed within the code. And then here, controls, what you see on the existing box is actually, that is items that have already been in the code and they've been implemented for quite a while now. Power controls, so when the building is not occupied, you know, the building would be shut down. Fan control ventilation, when a room gets to a certain level of occupancy, then ventilation starts to occur. Automatic start controls are something that could be installed that actually turns the building on at just the right moment to up to or down to temperature when an occupant first enters a building. After the off-hour controls turn it off for the evening. Newer things that are in there are ECONOMIZER, fault detection and diagnostics, boiler control, and zone isolation. The ECONOMIZERs are pretty important because that's a great way for us to get free cooling. I'll show you that in the following slide. But in the previous version of the code, a lot of issues with the ECONOMIZERs. Nobody was knowing that these were issues. So now in the code, it's written in there that we have to understand that these things might have issues, and then we could go and fix them. But an economizer in the building, it essentially provides free cooling. The temperatures that are outside are low that we can to cool the building for very inexpensive. There's two ways of going about it. There's the air side and water side. Most times, most people use the air side, but the free cooling is a much less expensive way with an economizer as compared to turning on an air conditioning unit. And you can see here in this slide, how do I go back? Backwards. Let's see what that. In this slide, this is actually how an economizer would work. See a fan in the top portion of the outside air, where the turn air would be turned down, the outdoor air would be turned on, and a lot of times in commercial buildings, even in winter, there's actually it's for cooling loads. So with those cooler temperatures, we could just turn on the fan rather than turn on the air conditioning unit and get the cooling much more inexpensively with just a little bit of electricity. With building envelope, where we separate conditioned space from unconditioned space, the air construction that's required by the energy code is really important. There's a thing out there called build tight, ventilate right, and what the energy code is telling us to do is build buildings tighter and tighter, which is the air construction. It needs to be continuous across all joints and seams. It needs to be able to withstand the pressures that the building may have, both internal and external, as well as be able to move with the building but still maintain its integrity. So all the things that you see on the screen have to happen in order to maintain that air barrier. And once that barrier is continuous, then we can size the equipment properly, minimize infiltration, minimize exfiltration, and make sure that the money that we're spending to condition that air is actually staying in the place where we want it. So air barrier is very important, and the examples that you'll see following this, you'll see that there's a lot of information that goes along with that. As far as air leakage and the air barrier, you take a look at your screen and you see on the left there's a picture of a standard visible light camera where you see a building on the right, and it looks pretty solid. On the right, you see an infrared picture where yellow-orange colors are actually leakage coming out of the building. So the inner corner there of the brick is actually not sealed very well, and there's a lot of losses that are going on there. And then so you can see where the brick detail is on that reveal kind of on the corner. They built that brick detail. One side was built correctly where there's leakage, but the other side shows a lot of leakage. So again, if you have an existing building and you want to figure out where to air seal, go out and get an infrared image of the building temperatures are right, and you could see these things very quickly and easily, and know quickly to potentially plug those leaks. Places where we find air leakage, recessed lighting, panel boxes, there's always air coming in behind all of those, so be aware that those should be sealed up as well. And lastly, I'd just like to end on the fact that we need to start thinking about buildings as a whole. Think about a building as just an HVAC system, or just an electrical system, or just the building envelope. Everything now is all going to be interconnected. The way the energy code has created things, and the way buildings are being built now, the interconnection of all these systems is going to affect each one of them. If something goes wrong with the HVAC, we know that there is going to be issues with the building thermal envelope. We're going to get condensation, we're going to get moisture. You know, if there's something that happens with the building envelope where we're actually getting too much infiltration, we might get condensation in the lights, we might have issues with the air conditioning. So just that buildings are being built as a unit now, as opposed to just pieces and parts. And just something to keep in mind when you do any projects within a building. Understand it's going to affect many other systems other than the one that you're just working on at that moment. And I'll pass it on to Pat.
Thank you, David. Terrific. All right. What's really nice about today's webinar is we have such a nice contrast between and among the speakers. So our next person is a practitioner day-to-day in the field, and I'm going to turn the webcam now. I may have to go small screen for a minute to do that. Hold on. Okay, hold on. Joseph, you have yourself on mute. This would be him to take it.
No.
All right. Now I have to get back to your slides. Hold on. All right. Malcarne, I see your trucks plying the streets of the Hudson Valley. I know you're a busy practitioner in the field. I've known you forever. So bring us up to speed on what you do out there in the field.
Sure. Let's start with next slide, and that I get to do, and which I'll get into more, is expanding and applying the things that David mentioned, which I appreciate kind of following up after him. Buildings, there are great opportunities for savings, and so what I'd like to do is kind of touch upon some of those. If we get the slides up there.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's not
like what you're talking, but I'll fiddle with it.
Okay, all right. A little bit about myself to kind of touch on what Pat mentioned earlier with the intro. I'm a mechanical engineer. Some of the other certifications that I have that are applicable to municipal and commercial buildings is the multifamily building analyst through BPI. That multifamily buildings and commercial and municipal buildings have a lot of similarities. Also, zero draft certification. That focuses on commercial, industrial, and municipal buildings, larger buildings, and specifically the building envelope. Also, infrared thermography. Dave showed an example of that with the brick building, kind of showing the contrast of what looks fine on the outside, and then you see the infrared thermography and where the leakage is, and also the certified energy manager through the Association of Energy Engineers, which is, again, going deep into how can we effectively seal up, operate, and manage a building energy efficiently to accomplish the building owner's goals or municipality's goals to reduce energy consumption to make sure you have a healthy and safe building. I have 5 children, and I started in the construction field in the 80s, and wife was a big influence in me getting into the energy efficiency side of things. I did in the early 2000s, and we've done several and retrofits. Here you can see in the past 4 years we've completed over 3,000 energy retrofits, which is a significant number, many of which were in multifamily and municipal buildings, and over 80 renewable energy projects. And so go back. Yeah, there you go. There's family with kids. Okay, next. Just touching on some of the projects that I've worked on a lot with municipalities is the Bayshore High School and Middle School, Gardine Manor Middle School, South County Schools, Carmel Central School Districts, Elmford Schools, Hastings, New Paltz, Peekskill Central Schools, Rhinebeck City Hall, so town halls, hospitals, libraries. So in the arena of municipal and town buildings, we certainly have a lot of experience and have worked with several of those. Again, David touched on some of these well-known ERMs, which are the energy reduction measures, are renewables, solar PV, solar thermal, which is heating water, solar walls, heating air, wind and geothermal, boiler management systems, lighting, the LED upgrades, motors, NEMA premium motors, and variable speed drive motors. And then specifically I want to touch on is the building envelope. Next. One of the studies done by the National Institute of Standards and Technology indicates that in commercial buildings, areas can help to reduce the infiltration of the buildings. Basically what it says is that commercial buildings are leaky, and we can reduce the air that comes into them by roughly half. Next slide. And the potential savings, if we're able to seal up these buildings that we have, are approximately 40% of gas savings and about 25% of electric savings. So there is a tremendous opportunity for savings by sealing up our buildings. And pretty much the older your building is, the more opportunities that you have for savings. And what I like to use is, if you're in a boat out that's taking on water, do you use a bigger bucket to bail out the water, or do you seal up the holes? So what we'd like to do is seal up the holes. So I kind of take you on a practical walkthrough of a few different buildings so you get an idea of where are these leakage areas. Next. So this is where you have a building soffit. So behind those soffits, and this is being framed out, is wall area that typically has a lot of gaps, cracks, and holes and little to no insulation. Next. You walk, into most of your buildings, you have a drop ceiling. And, they may be 2x2, 2x4 ceiling tiles, or 12x12. And then above those ceiling tiles, you have anywhere from 2 to 6 feet where they have ductwork run, and there's oftentimes a lot of debris up there, as you can see from the pictures, and many opportunities to both insulate and air seal buildings. Next. Again, this is in one of the older buildings, older school buildings, where you have ductwork that penetrates through with no insulation around, and again, the penetrations aren't sealed. Next. The side wall meets the roof, and we have corrugated roofing. There's typically like a 1/4 inch to an inch gap that the air can just travel right from within, again, above those drop ceiling areas, right to the outside. Next. And then you might have, like in a gym or in part of the mechanical rooms, where you'll have they won't have a drop ceiling, you'll just have the ceilings painted, and again, that same gap area still exists where the air can flow out. Next. Roof above the drop ceiling area where the leakage path. Next. are a big one. Single doors or double doors. Next, where the double doors meet together, it's often very difficult to maintain a good weather stripping there, but that's an important, again, around all doors. A lot of leakage comes through doors. Next. Pipes throughout, going from floor to floor are next, through walls, from conditioned space to unconditioned space. This, again, these are found above drop ceilings, or they're just, through like mechanical walls, into rooms, or even to the outdoors. Next. A look at the rooftop on many of your municipal buildings and schools, you'll see a bunch of penetrations. This is where you'll find your ventilation systems, and often you'll have these mushroom vents. Next, look forward 2 slides. Yep, an example of one of the mushroom vents, and you'll have several of these up on your roof. But if you open them up, next, find the ductwork that comes up in the middle with a mechanically operated vent that usually is filled with debris and garbage and is all dirty, like what you see here, and no ceiling around the outside. So there's anywhere from 1/4 of an inch to an inch gap around the perimeter that can be sealed up, and then the vents to be lubricated, adjusted, so that they actually work, because a lot of times they'll get stuck open, and then they'll just constantly be basically dumping heat out from inside the building. Next. Basically what happens is when we go to take a look at the building to say, how can we effectively seal the building around and take all of these gaps, cracks, and holes, the square footages that we can insulate, and put together a report. And I know it's probably too small to see, but essentially what it translates into is we'll save this many BTUs from reducing the air infiltration coming in and going out, and by insulating this side area. For example, it may be a $20,000 ceiling project that's going to save $2,500 a year and have an 8-year payback. And then you can take that information and get funding, present it to your board, or however it is that you proceed. But it gives you the documentation that can help with that. Next. Other things outside of the building envelope, and this does not apply to all situations. None of these apply to all situations. Every building is different. Every building is unique. So we handle each one of them individually. But oftentimes you can have some large Scotch marine boilers, or just large boiler systems that are heating water and steam are most common for these buildings. If you're doing steam, your options are more limited. But if you're heating water, one of the options that you have is to install modulating condensing boilers, known as Malcarne boilers, and you can put several of these together to equal the capacity of one of the larger boilers. And these run, 20% or more efficient, and it uses just what is needed. So it fires up. It doesn't have to fire up at 1 million BTUs. It can fire up at 100,000 or a couple 100,000 to provide the heating that is required for this. And in one building that I went to, they had a large boiler, and off of that large boiler was a zone that they used to heat a small room. So to heat that small room, they had to fire up the large boiler to do that. Next. This is a Newcastle water treatment plant, and this is a solar wall, which is a neat idea for places that you can utilize this. So this heats air to come into the building. Next. And which is heating water. This is for Benedictine Hospital, for heating the water for the hospital, preheating the water as it comes in to the building to save it. So I wanted to show you kind of a couple other options. Solar, electric, PV is very common. We see that often, but less so with the solar walls and the solar thermal Next. Back full circle from the study from the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Commercial municipal buildings, they have a large potential to be sealed up. There are many options that are out there to reduce energy. One of these, again, if we're able to effectively seal up these buildings, we have a potential gas savings of greater 40% and electric savings of 25%. So one might think, what would be the next step for your building? To have that, to see what potential savings you have for building envelope so that you can take advantage of these potential savings that you have. Next. Much for the opportunity to present, and if there's anything that I can do, of course, always happy to help out.
Thanks, Joseph. I'm sure we'll have some questions for you after we're all done with our presentations. All right, so I'm going to unmute now. Oops, I think he was unmuted. Mark Thielking. Good morning, Mark.
Good
morning. Being able to join us today. Now, I'm not seeing that your webcam is on, but it's enabled. Thing you need to do on your end. There you go. There you go. All right. Good morning, and let me start moving your slides.
Great. Well, thanks for today's webinar. It's a privilege to be part of this. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, with Joe and David talking about the specific items you can facilitate within your own municipal building stock. What the Energy Improvement Corporation, EnergizeNY, works on is helping municipalities offer similar services to the rest of the building stock within a community, which, as you probably could imagine, that's 90 to 95% of the energy use in the community is outside the footprint of a municipality or a school district. So, pass to the next slide. If you jump into details, actually go to the next slide after that. Just want to give who we are. So I'm the executive director of the Energy Improvement Corporation. We are a not-for-profit local development corporation. Our mission is to increase the adoption of clean energy improvements to building stock across New York State. We're controlled by local governments that wish to offer services related to clean energy or energy efficiency improvements. Funded by NYSERDA, and we serve property owners with services through the EnergizeNY brand. So if you hear a lot about EnergizeNY, that's typically our brand, but our real name is the EIC, or the Energy Improvement Corporation. Go to the next. Is now well over 50% of the population of the state outside of New York City. And most of our members are county and cities around the state, with exceptions. I'll go into that a little bit later. But houses are enabled within a city. There are multiple options to help building owners move forward with the same type of upgrades that David and Joe were talking about, but again, in their own building stock, in the commercial, nonprofit, and other entities within the community. Go to the next slide. Just an overview of what traditional public benefits are, and why I bring this up in my presentations is that a lot of people equate improvements to a community as related to things that individuals do specifically, but there's a lot of infrastructure that's built behind that's supplied by the municipality. So when you think about water and sewer infrastructure or fire police, these are all components of a community that help build that community to success and being a successful place for people to live and grow. So one of the newest public benefits, if you go to the next slide, that can offer is PACE financing, or property access clean energy financing. It was enabled in the state right around 2009, and its municipalities now can support building upgrades, and again, in areas of the community that are not specifically related to municipalities. The offering of financing, the offering of capital to help these improvements move forward. And see from Joe and from David's slides, these are improvements that are very deep, They're very expensive, but they're also extremely long-term in nature. The return on these investments can be, again, very long, but at the same time, they provide a lot of community benefits. In other words, lowering pollution, lowering emissions, creating building stock that's more valuable and more attractive to the community is really key, and this is why the state enabled this new public benefit to be offered. If you go to the next slide. In behalf of our members is to channel these new public benefits into real action at the local level. So we provide local contractor support to leverage EnergizeNY, also offer property owner support, and we also offer member support. Our members get support related to how to deploy this capital, but also how to pair this with initiatives within the municipality to realize the opportunity in seeing building stock, lower energy costs, and lower emissions. Slide as well. So also, we are paired with clean energy initiatives around the state, and one of the main reasons why this works so well is that, again, we're very similar to how other improvements are offered in the state. If you think about sidewalks are rolled out across a community or a new sewer district is rolled out, 100% of the costs of those improvements are covered. Same thing with PACE financing. Eligibility is really not based on much more than that the building is in the community. And there are more eligibility criteria related to PACE financing because PACE is optional. It's not required to do PACE financing. A lot of the same components as the repayment is made through an annual tax charge on the tax bill, which means that the financing automatically transfers from owner to owner. And also the terms are very long. So the types of improvements, again, that Joe outlined, which have a long investment period, we can pair that with financing that has also a very long term and also very low rates. Go to the next. I mentioned earlier that PACE pays really well with New York State's clean energy initiatives, and Robyn talked about earlier that there are programs out there that help municipalities move forward with grades. Well, there are other programs around the state, as you probably can imagine, from utilities, from NYSERDA, to help build these out, and we pair very well with those types of initiatives. Next one. That are available under EnergizeNY PACE are commercially owned, which are not-for-profits. It includes private colleges. It does not include individually owned residential, although it may come down the road. Currently, it's commercial owned or not-for-profit owned buildings. Go slide. What we would finance and what would be able to be financed is anything related to renewables or efficiency, but it must run through a NYSERDA or utility program or a NYSERDA approved process. The improvements must be quantified as being valuable to the community, and these programs do that. So we require that the projects must run through a NYSERDA or utility approved process. Go to the next slide. So some quick examples of how PACE has made a difference in the community in the city of Peekskill. This project happened last year. This is the former middle school of the city, which got converted in the 80s into an affordable sitting facility. Old equipment was from the 1980s that was heating and cooling and lighting this building, and they didn't really have the capital to improve it to the point where they would realize the savings that Joe was talking about. The improvements that were installed were new boilers, new chillers, pumps that were much more efficient than the old ones, as well as new lighting. They were facing a large maintenance bill on an annual basis. That has now been eliminated, and as you can see, the interest rate was very effective, and the savings are pretty substantial. Go to the next. This is an affordable housing project in the town of North Salem in Westchester County, and again, they were facing a lot of maintenance costs on a regular basis, but the primary reason they upgraded their building is that they couldn't keep tenants in building because the building was so uncomfortable. A building that had been built in the early 1900s, and it needed a full home performance with Energy Star upgrade to make that building more comfortable, but at the same time they're saving quite a bit of dollars. And the long-term nature of the financing paired very well with these types of improvements. Go to the next slide. And that is really exciting as well. This was a farm in Orange County, in Ocean. The project really was transformative to the business. The business was struggling with very high electricity rates in that part of Orange County. Given that it's a creamery, there's a lot of electrical load. Again, the financing that was offered through EnergizeNY by the county transformed this business into a self-sustaining enterprise that continues to this day. And I recommend their cheese. You can find it in several local gourmet shops around the region. So examples of projects, if you go to the next slide, that I'm able to work through. We have a project list, an active list that spans the pretty much most building types. And they focus on offering PACE in a community is that the building stock within a community is mostly not municipal, and there is a tremendous opportunity to improve that building stock as well, just like Joe and David have outlined. So we'll jump into how communities can enable PACE. If you can flip to the next slide. Availability is dependent on how taxes are collected within a county and the city. And in most of New York State, PACE may be enabled, again, by a county or a city. The exception of Westchester County, where townships have tax lien authority and villages. And of course, cities that have ceded that lien authority to the county then becomes the enabling entity. Sometimes we run into a situation where the bond rating of the municipality is too low. We're working on addressing the issue, but in general, in most state, counties and cities are the enabling entity that can move forward with PACE. Go to the slide. The way PACE is enabled is that there is a local law that is passed at the legislative level. That law restates the state statute that allows PACE to be offered in the county. There's a agreement that codifies what EIC does and what the county does in the provision of the PACE public benefit. And of course, you need to formally request membership through to our EIC board. Our board of directors is made up of municipal officials and leaders of our membership. The next slide. So if PACE is not available through your county, options to move forward with this, if you do want to see this. The first is to make aware that in the county, if the county does take action, that PACE does then become available within your community. And in most counties and cities around the state, if PACE is enabled at the county level, at the city level, it's then available community-wide, county-wide through townships and villages across the county. The other key thing is to encourage local developers that PACE can make a difference in the community if it's enabled. That's very helpful for the legislators and the leaders within that county to hear that. Finally, stay updated with how we're spreading the state. I have to say the momentum, thanks to people like Robyn and other folks within the CEC community, and dramatic. We've seen a dramatic increase in counties across the state, as well as moving forward. In fact, the statistic today is that 95% of the population of the state is either a member or talking with EnergizeNY to become a member of EIC. Outside to do that is. So we're a township or a village within a county that does not have PACE. Feel free to reach out to us and we can advise you on how to move forward. Just the next two slides are just to review of who PACE currently, our current members, all on our website. Next slide, these are the folks that are talking to us. And again, these slides will be available later. And only our contact information.
Thanks a lot, Mark. So I just want to remind everyone that you have two ways of communicating questions to us. You can just drop me a line at pat@courtneystrong.com, or you can use the chat feature of the WebEx toolbar. And I believe, chat's over on the right side. So you just click on that and type your question in. But meanwhile, we have a couple here that we wanted to ask each other because because this is a group that is doesn't get to chat every day together. So one thing I wanted to ask either David or Joseph. Let's see, Joseph is me, but not anymore, and David is here. Actually, I'll just let you ask those one because you're on speaker. But now that we have a number of communities that, you know, either grant money, or I think we're in the latter day circumstance where people know that they can go to their village or town board or city council and just make the case for energy efficiency, that it has the right, you know, it has a very good payback period. How would you advise people to get started when there's so many things in an old creaky building to do? So we talked a little bit about the low-hanging fruit. Maybe I'll kick that over to David first, and then let Joseph chime in. But you know, in a time of you know, finite resources, some communities are getting grant money now, but in most cases, it's really, I would imagine, when something goes wrong in the building is when a project maybe gets started, right? They start looking at systems, and then that leads to something else. But if you have a grant or an opportunity to get started, what do you advise? We don't have the energy audit program funded by CERTA anymore. So what would you say, David?
That's right. What was that going to suggest was hiring somebody to come in and take a look at the building and do a complete review of what conditions are and how we can make them better. Yeah. I could clarify. So, some of the participating contractors who did the free energy audit are continuing to do that. Not free, but they do it for, you know, a competitive rate for municipalities, and they can be found on the NYSERDA website. Some of them are FlexTech contractors, right? Mm-hmm. There's a whole list of FlexTech people that can be accessed. But let's say, you know, there's a whole laundry list of things. Well, after it's done, you put that together like we saw earlier to figure out which ones are the most cost effective to be able to provide with the best options, the highest return for the money that they're going to put in. Be the quickest, easiest way to go about doing that.
Right. And Joseph, can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. So does this ever happen that, you know, the municipality or the school district has one set of ideas about where to start, but really when you get in there and start dissecting things, it takes a different turn?
I would chime in with what they said and echo that. Is really the place to start is to do a evaluation of the building, because it all depends. There's not any one particular, you know, it's always going to be this answer. It would be nice if that's the case, but depending upon the age of the building, depending upon what you have there, again, you might have a building that's leaky that can use lighting upgrade, but the boiler is failing. So it's like, even though that might not be the greatest things in terms of the energy savings or the return on it, if the boiler's failing, you can't have a building without a heating system. So, you know, that takes priority. So again, it really does depend upon each building individually, and the best place to start is to, you know, really take a look into that, and then have someone that's looking at it have a good comprehension and understanding of all of the different potential savings opportunities that you can manage of. And that list prioritized based upon, you know, the needs of the building, based upon the appetite of the decision makers, what they're willing to do and what they want to do, and together a plan. For example, there are many people that like, you know, they want to see solar on the building so that they can say that they have solar, even though they may not be the greatest, the most energy efficient or effective way to invest your money. that may be what they want to go with. So it's definitely a balance of several things to keep in mind. But once you have, an energy assessment, an energy audit report, then with that information, you can make good, informed decisions.
So, Mark, with your commercial buildings and talking about the air barrier, is there a way to actually test what the current conditions are of the air barrier?
Joseph.
Sorry.
Right. Sure, we're looking at Mark.
With a lot of the buildings, typically there's not really an effective way of doing that. They do make very large blower door kits, and some of them that kind of look like, like a jet engine that you can attach into it. But because of all the research that's going into the size of the gap and the length of it, usually able to tally those up without going through that arduous and expensive, very costly process of actually testing the infiltration of the building. From the amount of air leakage that we find in the building, can get a pretty good idea of how leaky the building is and what can be done. A good approximate savings for filling up all of those areas.
Okay. A slightly different tack. I have a question for you, Robyn. So let's talk about I have a two-part question, how long it takes to get the Clean Energy Communities designation, and upgrade being one of the 10, what do you have to do to have that?
Sure. So designation takes a different time scale depending on the community. So we've seen a couple of communities breeze through it in a couple of months. We've seen other communities take a little bit longer to get across the finish line. It really does depend on which action items any community feels is a good fit for them and how long those action items take. So there are some that require just a policy to be passed, so that could be done in a couple months. Things like clean energy upgrades do take a little bit longer. So we've seen a lot of communities look at, at the list what might be both best for the community and also fairly feasible for them to complete. So things like benchmarking, which is just a good general practice, can be really completed in a month or two. So that's a very popular item that we have on the list that a lot of communities achieve. So I recommend that you really do reach out to your coordinator, connect to them, and see what might be a good fit for you. So that really kind of helps accelerate the process depending on what's chosen. A lot of our communities do choose, again, the ones that are fairly to implement, but we do reinforce that, again, as this best practices list, it's a good thing to almost see it as like an asset management exercise. What have other communities done that they benefited from, and how can you understand the benefits to you, and then what the process is. So, with a lot of communities, seen New York as a very attractive option to pursue, and as Mark said, we're helping folks to understand what that process looks like and how to approach that. So it's great to have all these resources like David, like Mark. We're a good team here, and we're helping people get through it quickly if that's what their aim is, or to really look at it as a long-term planning exercise. So it really depends. In terms of the clean energy upgrades option, again, that's one of the more complex actions on the list, and it's a heavier lift than some of the other actions. So when folks, experts are talking about where to start, we really do encourage that if a municipality hasn't already had a clean energy upgrade, for example, we've worked with a lot of municipalities that are really young hot solar and have a couple of solar installations in town. So in that case, we might say, okay, well, let's get your benchmarking data in. Let's see what your portfolio looks like, and let's see if the actions that have already been completed can count towards your designation. So in that case, it's a pretty simple and straightforward process. Those who are just opening the door, we really try and look at, as the experts know, how can we connect you with folks that can do a full assessment? So how can we get you those energy audits? How can we look at your building assessments and see which buildings are the quote-unquote problem buildings or leaky buildings, so that those can be on the list? So it's more of a factoring exercise as opposed to, just something that could be completed in a couple of months. So it's a little more complex to get that accomplished, but certainly the returns are greater. So we hope the community has chosen the ones that are a little bit more expeditious, let's say, and gets to the line for designation, they might use that money on a capital project which has any conservation measures included. And a lot of the communities that we work with do see that as the end goal. You know, let's kind of get the lower hanging fruit off the list accomplished. They're still good in and of themselves. And then once we have that money, we can think about what to use it on in terms of capital improvements. And a lot of the time we do note that NYPA has a program where they can provide energy audits, so that might be a good fit for the monies or just a good way to start to get those energy audits completed, and then, you know, you'll have a better understanding of where to go from there. So
terrific. Now, a question from our friend Karen London in Bethel, Sullivan County, for you, Robyn. She says, this is a popular question, you'll recognize it. My understanding is that all of the allocated awards for the Mid-Hudson region have already been awarded under Clean Energy Communities. We are anticipating fulfilling our fourth high-impact action within the next month. Will there be another round of competitive? A short answer. Yes,
but certainly, you know, we are not in control of the funding, so we hope that, you know, as your community approaches designation, that our coordinators can help you either find other grant opportunities that your community can apply to. It's certainly a significant accomplishment to be designated as a clean energy community, so congratulations for being so close to the finish line. And if your community is interested in other grants, your coordinators are happy to help you find those grants and hope that there's another round of funding. But certainly, it would be great if you can note your assistance that you've received through the program and how great that's been, and your hope for more rounds of funding. We think that as more benefit is demonstrated through the program, hopefully its value will be recognized and maybe it'll be more fun in the future. But right now, sit tight and continue working towards completing all 10.
Terrific. Great. Thank you. We have questions coming in. I don't see any others coming in by email. So let's just reiterate how people can get in touch with us. We have, well, we would have to go to 4 different pages here, but let's just say people could direct comments and questions to Robyn, ROBYN, at cdrpc.org, right? And then you'll be the tech director from there.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you, David and Mark and Joseph, for being our speakers today, as well as Robyn, and we'll wrap up. Thank you all very much for coming to this webinar. Feel free to get in touch by email or by phone. Thank you.